Verse 2 continues. In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Having noted that she was looking for a husband for Ruth, and then noting the fact that Boaz was in the know concerning her status and relationship to him, she now goes further in her matchmaking plans by noting that, oh boy, I happen to know where he's going to be this evening. It's an exceptional excuse for her to meet him. Why? Because it's nighttime, it's outside of the city, and it's away from where he lived. And he'd be out there working all alone. And on top of all of that, it would be after a feast with the day workers. After harvesting and bringing in the sheaves, they'd have a meal before going home. The owner, however, would stay at the threshing floor to guard the grain. At such a time, he'd be in good spirits. He'd be satisfied with the day behind him. He'd have a full stomach. He'd be happy from the wine. He would be in a good mood because of the satisfaction of an excellent day of harvesting. He'd lay among the grain, content with the labor of his hands. It would make for the perfect moment and place for Ruth to exercise her right of redemption. Keep thinking of Jesus and when we call on him. It's all going to be cleared up in the last sermon that we do at the end of chapter 4. Naomi's words indicate that she had paid close attention to the movements of Boaz and also to the kindness that he had shown to Ruth. Her proposal was certain to have a positive outcome because she could tell that his heart was in no way unsympathetic to Ruth. Ruth began her gleaning at the start of the harvest, and now she begins by a new direction, by taking these actions during the threshing of the winnowing of barley. Now I want you to remember that as well, because what did it say at the end of the last chapter? It says she stayed through the barley and the wheat harvests. And yet we're back in the barley harvest all of a sudden. Pay attention to these things because that's important. Do you know what I'm talking about? Does everybody remember that? It says that Ruth stayed from the barley all the way through the wheat harvest. And all of a sudden we're back in the barley harvest. This is very important to remember these little details. And like I said, they're going to be explained later. During the intervening time, Naomi had observed enough to know that both of them were suited for each other and that both of them were inclined towards one another. And so she directs Ruth to the threshing floor of Boaz. A threshing floor, I want to describe this to you so you know what it is. It's a place where grain was taken, and it may sometimes have had a covered top to keep rain off of the grain. But regardless of whether it had a top or not, the sides would be left open. And it would be situated where breezes would come through the best, okay? Either on the top of a hill or maybe out in an open field where the breezes would be very strong. In the land of Israel, the wind starts to rise from the sea about 4 o'clock or so in the afternoon, just like it does in Florida. And it continues until after sunset. The floor of a threshing floor would be mixed with chalk, both to keep weeds from growing up and also to keep the ground from cracking during the dry season. And this would be compacted and it would be perfectly hard and it would be perfectly flat. Okay, so you got this nice flat area. In the middle of the floor, the stalks would be threshed to separate them from the grain and from the chaff by breaking open the kernels of grain. After that, what they do is they take it and they toss it up into the air, and the wind would blow away all of the lighter stuff, and all of the heavier grain would fall back down into a pile, thus purifying the grain. Here in this spot of labor and industry, Boaz, the man of great wealth, as he's called earlier, participated along with his laborers in the winnowing of his barley, and then he would lay down by this large heap of grain and sleep for the night, satisfied and content.